Career in Android, 1,000-foot perspective. Who am I to talk about Android development anyway? Hello, I'm Kimbo. I am Dark's partner in crime. You have heard a presentation from Dark. I am his equivalent on Android. I have about like 10 years of experience doing Android development. Started in 2013, been working through some of the company around Helsinki with startups and, scale up like Zalando. And now I'm currently the staff engineer at Wolt consumer Android applications. What is this presentation is going to be about? One of the things that I believe is that all the career roadmap that you see on the internet at the moment, they are quite helpful, but they might not paint the full picture of what you are going to be expected to do in your job, in your day-to-day job. What kind of challenge, what kind of solutions that you are require as software engineer to solve. And this presentation is kind of like a way to share my own experience working in Android, working in software development, all the problems that I found interesting so far throughout my whole journey at Wolt. These are actual Wolt problems that we have been trying to solve. It's not a one-size-fits-all talk, but I hope that, regardless of your current level of experience, whether you are just very new to Android development, or you are just interested, or you have been working in Android development for 15 years, there will be some tidbits that, interest you. So, without further ado, I think that's a lot of intro already. Let's jump into the problem. This is something that you might have seen in the Wolt applications, the hero banner. I will now stop the presentations and actually jump into the actual emulator I have here, if I can. No. Obviously need more preparations, but right. You probably see this thing that is scrolling on top here where my mouse pointer is. You might have also seen that it might play videos, even though it's not playing videos right now. I was so sure that I set up so that it's actually playing videos, but demo effects as always. Let's see here. Yeah, videos. You can have 1, you can have 10 videos playing here on a carousel. This is actually my first task at Wolt. And if you are any familiar with the way that a list view work, we render all this list view from a payload from the backend side. So there's a lot of data processing going on. But if you're familiar with it, you will know that video playing on a vertically scroll list like YouTube or Facebook on your feed is usually not a simple problem. Usually there's a lot of things that you need to manage. For example, the live circle. For example, like the video playback, the autoplay itself. And as you can see, there's also some auto rolling now here. If I pause it for like a few seconds, it's automatically roll. So there's a lot of things to worry about. So how do you, as a person new to the company, new to the code base, and new to Android development in overall would handle this? Well, obviously, the first step is to determine if there's any pre-existing library out there to help you, right? Unfortunately, usually the case is that there would not exist any pre-existing library if you are getting into the customizations that you wanted to get to this result. So you will have to start reading your documentations, finding the actual how would this work. What I have here is an Android view holder. is a part of a recycler view. Okay, technical problems again. It's just a view that displaying an image. Now I want to make this image play, so I have to implement like Exo Player because it's an image that is playing video. And if you have used Exo Player before, you know that it's a very heavy object to retain in your memory. So every time this scroll, you have to create a new instance. And if you don't recycle that instance, that means your application is going to run out of memory, like in 10 scroll or something. So as you can see, like this is the problem that you would be expected to solve earlier in your like Android career. You'll be like, you know, we study the problem, we trying to solve an Android problem. Maybe there's a solution somewhere, maybe there's not a solution somewhere that we can use. The framework itself is going to work against you. It's going to be a pain in the neck with the life cycle. But if you are interested in Android, then, you know, like we can learn about this and we can use our documentations, use our wit to work through this. So I'm going to talk about the second interesting problem that's also kind of related to this, is like also animations. Now you are a person, like I'm managing 3 screens at the moment actually, and trying to stop them from like going to sleep. So excuse me with my technical blunder here. Yeah, let's go back to the presentations if I can. So obviously you have solved this. You read your documentations, you learn how the Android frameworks work, you learn all the details about it, how to make sure that we handle the life cycle very well, how to make sure that we do the right things, we have all the tools that is needed so that we don't run into frameworks problem like Android not responding or out of memory. You want now you are kind of like an expert in Android frameworks, right? And you want to differentiate yourself from like other developer or other applications on the market. And user experience is something that, you know, usually you will think that is the differentiator. And I tend to agree. So what I did second is I look at our iOS implementations, and there's this one fancy animations that is a little bit weird. And there's no applications. Well, maybe there's some application out there that does that, but I don't know. Let me show the screen once more, how this animation looks like. So this is the venue view. If you go from the main screen to the venue view, you can see that the blur hash on top, it expands to circle. There's actually 4 random circle expanding every time you go into the view, making the user experience very smooth. But there's not a single way in Android to support this. Well, there's technically is, but they are very hidden. Also, there's no library. Again, how are you going to do this? How to expand beyond what the frameworks is going to offer you? This is where you have to read into the implementations of the framework. How was it built? How is the glide transitions? So I started this by going to glide, a library, to display image. How do it switch fading between images? Cross-fading between images. And the answer is that, you know, they are using some fancy trick with the Android framework itself. It's just the trick is very hidden, very deep inside the framework. It's called layer drawable. I can actually show the code as well. Let me see if I will manage to do that. So what it does is simply drawing a bitmap on top of what is already shown. And this bitmap keep getting smaller. This is actually the code. If I can zoom it a little bit, that would be nice. So random circle drawable. What this code does is basically define four center for the circles, and for each frames, it's draw the circle a little bit bigger. It's apply the bitmap on top of that, and it extends like layer drawable. So it actually is a part of frameworks. So in summary, at this point, what you want to do is to read into what the implementations of the framework is, trying to explore what other people have done that is, that is fancy, that has something for you to learn. Obviously, there's a lot of like manual calculations here as well. For example, like you need to find out like what is the needed radius for each of these circles, so they overlapping each other and they overlap the whole screen, so that you don't display part that is still blurred and the part that is already blurred, already unblurred, sorry. And if you reach this point of the career, you can pretty much confidently say that, hey, I know Android now. I know Android almost inside out. You're a developer. Sorry. Okay. I'm managing like presentations again. Where is my presentation? Oh, it's here. Perfect. You're a developer, Harry. Actually, like I have skipped a few steps here. Obviously, to get here, you have to get familiar with the frameworks like MVI, MVP. How do they compare between each other? Making sure that your code is well documented, well structured. Also, you have to grow as a developer within your organization as well, learning how to do estimations, learning how to prioritize, like the task that your manager has given you. Also, like learning about the overall architecture of the backend. How is the application similar? Like how does similar applications, for example, your iOS counterpart or your web counterpart is going to have to, like behave? Do you behave similarly or do you behave differently? Obviously, there's a lot of things to learn, but we're here to talk about the problems that I found interesting. So on to the third one. Now you are kind of like a senior person. You are well regarded within your organizations. You are the go-to man to solve like the problems within your context. What kind of challenge that could, potentially trip you up a little bit? Well, Google being Google, there will be times where you have to adapt to change. There will be times where you have to unlearn what you have learned and, and learn new things. Now we have to do migrations. Do we have to stick with our current way of doing things? What are the drawbacks? What are the advantages? And one of the things that I actually wrote a blog post on, I will share this link later if you are interested, is the migrations from JSONs to Moshi, which is a library to decode like JSONs to like Kotlin objects. Well, this migration actually is a no-brainer because like Kotlin support for Moshi is out of the box, and the JSON parsing error should be strict, so that the application actually crash if like there's some nullability like happening on the JSON side, which is great if we want to actually see the problem surfacing. There's also easy polymorphism with typing, which means that if you have a type field in your JSONs, it will be cast automatically to the Kotlin objects that you want to use. Very, very handy thing. So this is a no-brainer when we do the migration. It's also like a single line of like almost like a single change in the code base. It wasn't complex. But what if you have more migrations? Because more migrations is coming. What about like Kotlin serializations? If Moshi was so simple, why don't we just use Kotlin X? What about like XML's compose? That is the hot topic at the moment. Rx Java, everybody started with Rx Java, but now coroutine is the thing. Flow is the thing to use. We have an inner architecture called Wolt architecture, which was built on MVI 5 years ago. It's really powerful for what it is, but it has been outdated. Now there's a Google architecture recommended to you by Google. Why would anybody like take time learning the Wolt architecture anymore? And there's a lot of things to come in the near future. So how do we do all of this? So now it's your job as a senior engineer to evaluate this thing. What is going to bring the impacts? How much impact is going to be to the workflow of other people within your team, within your organizations? This is always going to be a very tricky like questions to answer, because the workflow that you are proposing might be the greatest thing, next greatest thing. But if people are unfamiliar with it, there will be pushback. There will be people who is like, you know, like happy with the way thing is. And that's fine. That is where you have to start, how can I say, pushing for change, facilitate the change, sharing your knowledge with your fellow developer, working together to build a code base that worth doing. All right, so I think that's a lot of responsibility apart from the work that you have to do your day-to-day, like implementing feature, making sure that the feature is working, doing all the testing. So what's after this? That's already a lot of responsibility. So this is what my current problem is. As a staff engineer, what is my responsibility actually? This is an interesting question because I have like a lot of discussions with fellow staff engineers around the globe on like what are they expected to do, what are the problems that they are solving, what are the scope, what are like the visions, what are the things that you would expect from a mobile staff engineer. And in no way this list is finite. Life is not only about migrations. Life is not only about the things that you have to do. So far, if you reach to this level, so far, everybody has been telling you what to do, what to prioritize. The tech depths like that you are facilitating is something that you're interested in, you want to push forward. But now at the staff level, nobody is going to actually tell you what to do anymore. So you have to start asking yourself questions like, what is your scope? What is your problem that you can solve right now? What do you want to leave for later? How do you understand that later things will not turn into a tech debt 2 years from now that is going to slow down your whole development cycle? What kind of like architecture change to make? Again, this is the same thing with like pushing change to like frameworks. Like this will make significant impact on other people, like other people works. Are we ready to do this? Do we have the headcounts? Do we have the resources to even push these things out? This is what we are actually like having at the moment, 3 different migrations to compose, to coroutines, to modularizations. And each of these are very important. But how do you justify this to like the business side of things? How do you say that this change will become like, will enable us to do so much 2 years from now? You can't say that because you don't know. What are we going to do 2 years from now? What's the visions? What is the impact that you as a staff engineer can bring to the table right now that bring values? These are the questions that I'm struggling with at the moment. So how do we do it? At this point, I think this is what my own strategy is, but obviously it's applied differently for different people. How do I know that I'm doing the right thing is the questions that we have to answer. And I guess you can see it's there. Observability is what we want to get to a state where we can observe the differences that our changes make, observe an endpoint latency, observe the startup time, observing the free frames, observing the Android not responding cases, of the crashes, of every minor little improvement in our user metrics. At this point, you have to start taking a step back to look at things holistically. The change that you make, the change in the visions that you make, might have an impact 6 months from now on, from the time that you make the decisions until the things has been implemented. And you have to have a way to say, hey, this is like the impact from that decisions, and you can justify the impact. And yeah, that's pretty much like the current place that I am at the moment. But what after this? I actually have a chat with a principal level Android developers for Hinge, dating apps in the US. And what he told me was that, it's just going to be the same stuff that we've been telling, but it's just going to get worse. The scope is always going to linearly increase or even exponentially increase with the complexity of the code base. There will be 20 people working in the same piece of code, or worse, 100 people or 300 people in the case of Uber in Android. Back in the day, I don't know what their number is at the moment. Every single decisions of the architecture is going to have a ripple effects out in your organizations. You might be building your applications on Android, but that doesn't mean that it will not affect our Flutter people that is building the same thing, using the same API from the backend. You have to have the holistic view of the backend and the architecture of what they are doing to make these kind of decisions. And the visions also needs to align across team. Where do we go from here? Are we going to adopt like Flutter, like as the main frameworks going forward? Are we going to move our logic across the front end to the back end? Because if you have the logic on the front end, meaning that you have to have the logic repeated 3 different places, and it might go out of sync with each other. These kind of decisions, this kind of visions needs to be aligned not only on your applications, but like on the other applications that might be inside your organizations. And I think that's a lot of things to take in, but hopefully like you can see your journey from the moment that you begin like Android development, the moment that you learned the things from the documentations, until the moment that you have to tackle the organizational problems that you might face in your development career. I think that this also applies for all our friends in Flutter and as well as in iOS. So I hope that that this has been helpful. And if this doesn't deter you from like doing Android development, then please buckle up and have a nice journey. Thank you for listening.